we are going to be breaking down the content between my internet dad and my internet brother. My internet dad is Jordan B. Peterson. My internet brother is Destiny Stephen Bonnell. Stephen is quite smart, quite intellectually gifted, quite good at debate. Jordan Peterson is a mythological Jungian psychologist, dream soothsayer shaman. And so a debate between the schizotypal mythological shaman versus a rationalist debate bro should be fire. So let's go ahead and bring our contenders on stage, and I'll be pausing intermittently to break them down.
New tour for 2024, beginning in early February and running through June. Tammy and I, an assortment of special...
Fast forwarding past the commercial.
When you look at like the fall of the Soviet Union, or you look at the failure of like socialist or communist regimes, I don't know if the issue there was so much redistribution.
That was one of many issues.
I don't think it was an issue at all, actually.
What do you mean redistribution wasn't an issue? What the hell do you think they did to the kulaks?
If you believe climate models, or if you believe that we're heading in a certain direction.
I don't believe any of those presumptions.
People keep saying that, but we just got another one of the hottest years on record.
That's a classic leftist argument.
Why wouldn't Putin, why wouldn't Xi Jinping, why wouldn't anybody else in the world call this out? It was as horrible as it was.
There are plenty of people attempting to call
Nobody
out
credible.
You really think that you're in a position to evaluate the scientific credibility of the trials for the vaccines, do you?
Oh, no. No. This is going to be like Thanksgiving all over again. Fuck.
Hello, everyone. I'm here today talking to Stephen Bonnell, known professionally and online as Destiny. He's an American streamer, debater, and political commentator. He really came to my attention, I would say, as a consequence of the discussion he had with Ben Shapiro and Lex Friedman. And I decided to talk to him, not least because it's not that easy to bring people who are identified, at least to some degree, with the political beliefs on the left into a studio where I can actually have a conversation with them.
Holy shit, I need a grift as a liberal. If this was actually true, where Jordan Peterson and Daily Wire people are having problems finding intellectual, quote unquote, liberals and lefties to talk to, holy fucking shit. I need to dye my hair blue, and I need to trans my dogs. Oh, fuck. All right. Anyways.
I've tried that more often than you might think. And it happens now and then, but not very often. So today we talk a lot about, well, the differences between the left and the right, and the dangers of political ideology per se, and the use of power as opposed to invitation, and all sorts of other heated, often heated and contentious issues. And so you're welcome to join us. And I was happy to have the opportunity to do this. So I guess we might as well start by letting the people who don't know who you are get to know who you are with a little bit more precision. So why have you become known, and how has that developed?
It's a pretty broad question. I think I started streaming around 15 years ago when it wasn't really a thing yet. There were a few people that did it. I started early on. I was well, I guess back then you weren't a professional gamer yet because the game had just started to come out, but there was a game called StarCraft 2, and I streamed myself playing that game. I was a pretty good player. It was pretty entertaining to watch. And then I kind of grew over, I guess, maybe the next 7 years, just streaming that people would watch.
Streaming on YouTube?
Well, back then I started on a website called Livestream. Then I switched to Ustream. Then I switched to a site called Justin TV. And then that turned into Twitch.tv. So after streaming there for like 7 or 8 years, I was a semi-professional StarCraft 2 gamer. That game kind of came and went, but I had a lot of other interests. Around 2016, I started to get more involved into the world of politics. It's kind of a left-leaning figure because of my background in like esports and internet gaming and internet trash talk. Like I had more of a kind of like a combative attitude, and that was kind of rare for left-leaning people at the time. So it's basically where my early political popularity came from. I think from like 2016 to 2018 was debating right-wing people.
So was there a game-like element to the debating, do you think? And is that part of why that morphing made sense?
I love my dad. I love my real dad, but I also love Jordan Peterson dad. You understand that this is actually a pretty insightful question to almost instantaneously pick up on, Do you understand that this might actually speak to the core of Destiny's identity? Like, dude, so what I've noticed, and I'm not trying to be like too parasocial, but Steven, when we went shooting together in South Florida, he was getting frustrated that he wasn't able to master the shotgun range, the when we were firing clays. And he had like an obsession with trying to get good, to the point that even when he was screwing up, he kept repeating, he wanted to go through it again and again and again and again until he got better. And the same thing happened, obviously, with StarCraft. I'm sure he could give me like a breakdown and detailed analysis. The same thing happened with whatever that Factorio, the game that he's obsessed with mastering, despite the fact that it's effectively a massive time sink. And then when you look at the way that he engages in rhetoric and politics, I think to a large degree, Stephen does articulate liberalism as a political philosophy because he genuinely believes it, because it is the best system for him individually. Living in a free society is good for Stephen, and so he's a militant advocate for liberalism. But while still speaking truth, he does engage in rhetorical gamesmanship, not because he's not trying to speak true, but because he's trying to be the most effective debater possible. And so Jordan Peterson, my internet dad, who all of you disrespect, and you're obviously going to piss me off, him seeing almost instantaneously, you were a gamer and a shit talker and a banter person who enjoyed the mastery of mastering a video game. Did you take that skill set, insight, and interest and apply it to the realm of politics? And I think the answer instantaneously from Stephen, even if he denies it, the answer should be yes, absolutely.
No, I won't say so.
Go fuck yourself, Stephen. All right. Let's see what his rationale is.
Oh, I mean, if you get really reductionist, everything in life is kind of a game, but that's not very satisfying. I think I grew up like very argumentative. My mom is from Cuba, so my family was like very conservative. And then I grew up like listening to the news all day, listening to my mom's political opinions all day. And then I argued with kids in high school and everything. And I've always been kind of like an argumentative, type A, aggressive personality. So I think that probably lent itself well to the political stuff in 2016. Yeah.
Okay, but you cannot tell me that the way that he approaches rhetoric is not the same as like mastery, the intention to master a video game. So hold on, my fan isn't working and I'm getting very hot. So excuse me 1 second. I do find that funny that Stephen was like, nah. Oh, cool. My overhead fan is busted. That's very cool. Oh no, it's not on. That's the problem. Cool. I fixed it. I am a genius. Continuing. I don't believe Stephen, and I'm actually going to write this down as something that I want to argue with him on. Gamesmanship. Texas, why are you such an asshole? Children dying is not worse than other people dying. Then let's do... This will be under the Jordan Peterson stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm going to invert this. The Texas thing, I think, is going to be a warm-up. If we hang out on the 27th and if we have time for a podcast, then I'll open up with why are you such a dick in reference to the Texas stuff. Then I'll challenge him on the Jordan Peterson debate edging stuff and women in the workplace and dragon / fire as a predator archetype. And then this will be a good one too. Game mastery applied to politics. If he doesn't see it in himself, that's totally fine. I just like, from an exterior perspective, it makes a lot of intuitive sense to me.
Was that useful in gaming? That personality?
Yes. It was useful in streaming for sure.
In some ways, yeah. In some ways, no. I don't know directly for the games itself. I don't know how much it necessarily mattered. But for all the peripheral stuff, in some ways it was really beneficial. I could kind of like cut out my own path and I could be very unique and I could kind of be on my own. In some ways it was very detrimental. I can be very difficult to get along with. And I'm very much kind of like, I want to do this thing. And if you try to tell me what to do, I don't want to have like a sponsor or a team or anybody kind of with a leash on me. So yeah, I guess it worked out.
It's interesting.
That was going to be one of my questions did he do the Texas thing as a way to say, if you're trying to put a leash on what I say and what I do, then you can go fuck yourself? I actually wonder if that's a subconscious motivation for the Texas tweet.
Because the temperamental proclivity that you're describing, that's associated with low agreeableness. And generally, well, and that's more combative, it's more stubborn, it's more implacable, it's more competitive. The downside is that it's more skeptical, it can be more cynical, it can be less cooperative. But generally, a temperament like that is not associated with political belief on the left.
True. I think that's why Stephen is so successful, is because he has a right-wing temperament advocating for left-wing politics.
Because the leftists tend to be characterized by higher levels of compassion, and that's low agreeableness. So, that element of your temperament, at least, is quite masculine. And that's
why a lot of dudes like Stephen when he's doing banter, is because it's funny as shit and it's disagreeable. Yes.
The ideology that characterizes the modern left has a much more temperamentally feminine nature. So all right. So why do you think the shift from your popularity to political commentary worked? And you said that started about 2016. And why do you think that shift happened for you, like in terms of your interest?
I think I've always been interested in a lot of things. Like, I grew up with a very strong political bend. It was conservative until I got into my streaming years, probably 5 or 6 years into streaming. I slowly kind of started to shift to the left. I would say that, I guess in around 2016, when I saw all of the conversations going on with the election and when all the issues being talked about, I felt like the conversations were very low quality. And in my naivety, I thought that maybe I could come in and boost the quality, at least in like my little corner of the internet, to have better conversations about what was going on. And so that was basically my injection point into all of that, was, fighting about those political issues and then arguing with people about them, doing research and reading and all of that. Yeah.
And so did you do that by video to begin with as well?
Yeah, it was all streaming. Yeah.
It was all streaming. And so I presume you built an audience among the people who were following you as a gamer first, and then that started to expand. Is that correct?
Basically, yeah. Without getting too much into like the business or streaming side of things, basically, actually, this probably carries over to basically to all media, I would imagine, is you've got people that will watch you for special events. So maybe you're like a commentator of the Super Bowl, or maybe you're hosting like a really huge event. Then you've got people who will watch you every time you're participating in your area of expertise. So for me, that's like a particular game I might be playing. It might be when you're on like a particular show or something that people watch you for. And then the fundamental fan, like the best fan that you're converting to the lowest and most loyal viewer, I guess, is somebody that's watching you basically no matter what you're doing. And these are the people that'll follow you from area to area. Right. And I think because of the way I did gaming and I talked about a lot of other stuff, whether it was politics, science, current events, whatever, I had a lot of loyal fans that kind of followed me wherever I went. So quite a few of them stuck in Star Trek.
Established a reputation.
Yeah.
So how would you characterize?
Brilliant. Honestly, like, I should pick Stephen's brain about business analysis. Excuse me. 3 types of fans: big events, special events, and fans of the personality. And what's interesting about this is that we could go back, and I would basically say that the big event for me in politics is probably the Lance and Surfs debate. So if I'm on a big debate with other big characters, I will see an increase in viewership, because they're kind of hoping that it will get as spicy as that debate. And sometimes I deliver and sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's a boring panel, sometimes it's a fire panel. Actually, some of my worst debates, in my opinion, are my most popular ones, which is hilarious, because the other person was a fucking idiot. Then when special events, I would say that would be like, people would watch me for debate style content or review style content, or they would watch me for Warhammer, et cetera, et cetera. That's what Stephen's basically saying. And then fans of the personality are people who will follow you through a variety of niches. What is interesting about Stephen is that I think that he has been doing this for so long and he's been so consistent with putting out content that I would say the people who will watch him no matter what, like they'll watch him during the League of Legends game days or whatever, where he's actually just playing video games and not saying anything. I would say that's 3,000 to 5,000 people, which is actually very impressive that effectively this dude could fart into the fucking wind and his audience is larger than 99% of people on the internet. But when he's engaged in special events like debates or political research, he does better. And when he's involved in large events like debates against large characters, he does even better. This is just descriptively true and kind of an interesting thing to strategize about from a business perspective.
Is your reach now? How would you quantify it?
I think well, can you be more precise?
How many people are watching your tip?
And sorry, let me just go ahead and address the food thing real quick. That way I can move on in chat. For the food thing, you're going to have to eat a shitload. But Jonah Zilla, just being real, chicken and rice can be your mainstay for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's actually very cheap. You can just buy shitloads of chicken breasts and batch cook them on Sundays. That's actually what I do. But if you're trying to hit 6,000 calories and you're trying to gain weight and lift weights, the easiest way to do it is just protein shakes. Just buy a $50 jar of, protein powder and then just drink a protein shake every hour. That's the only way I was able to get the amount of protein that I needed and the amount of calories that I needed.
Typical video that you might produce, and what are you doing for subscribers, say on YouTube, and total? Any idea about total reach?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess my subscribers on YouTube, I have around, I think that's around 770,000 on my main channel. I think I probably do between.
Which is funny because he's tripled in size since this interview. Did he say 170,000?
I have around, I think that's around 770,000 on my main channel.
Oh, 770,000. Okay. All right.
I think I probably do between all three channels, I think around 15 to 20 million views a month. And then I live stream to anywhere from 5 to 15,000 concurrent viewers a day for hopefully around 8 hours a day. Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's impressive by itself. Around 5 hours, my brain just turns to soup.
Okay. So you have quite a substantial reach. And so you said that initially you were more conservative leaning, but that changed. What did it mean that you were more conservative leaning, and how and why did that change?
When I said I was conservative leaning, I was writing articles for my school newspaper defending George Bush and the Iraq War. I was like very much like, I think it's like an insult
based
now when people say like neocon, but I was like very much like a conservative, a Bush era conservative. So supported big business, supported traditional, all of the conservative, I guess, like foreign policy, hawkish foreign policy, for whatever that meant as like a 14, 15-year-old.
Right.
There was the whole Elian Gonzalez incident that was very big for Cuban Americans, where there was a Cuban boy that tried to come to the United States with several other people and his mother, and their raft, I guess, crashed or something happened. I think his mom died and some other people died, and there was a
Elian Gonzalez
huge debate on whether or not to send him back to Cuba, and Clinton ended up sending him back to Cuba. And I know that my mom was super irritated and all that, to say the least. And then once I hit college, I think I supported Ron Paul in 2008. So I was a big Ron Paul libertarian guy in high school. When I went to a Catholic Jesuit.
Dude, conservatarianism is just correct, man. Like, I view this as a failure of the right wing. I genuinely do. So the problem with libertarians and anarcho-capitalism is it is unable to protect itself. By constantly trying to diffuse the power of the state, it allows itself to become the victim of those who wield power. And so you have to ask yourself, what are the appropriate rules of government within a society, and then allow a government to fulfill those roles. And so libertarianism's constant political failure, I associate with that. But the truth is that like fiscal conservatism isn't fully correct, because effectively they will spend $1 in order to try to save a dime. So they're kind of fucking stupid, even though their instincts are in the right place. Their execution is terrible. And then social conservatives I think there's something to be said for like the Jordan Peterson mythological analysis of religion. I'm not a literalist, but I do think that a lot of literalists live good lives because they follow the moral memes of religion. So they're also largely incorrect while still doing things well. And then, of course, I just think Burke is like Burkean conservatism, which is so small that it's practically non-existent. I just think is fundamentally correct. But I do view it as a failure of the right, where there is not kind of like a moderate conservative perspective that failed libertarians can go to. And instead, I think failed libertarians will oftentimes become liberals. I do view this as a failure of the right.
High school, and I kind of became atheist in that process. I started reading Ayn Rand. So I was very, 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 very conservative.
But on the libertarian end, it sounds
I would say so. Yeah. Initially on the
that makes more sense in relationship to your temperament.
Sure, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Initially it was like Christian conservative, and then it became like libertarian conservative. Without my life kind of took like a wacky path, and then as I started.
I'm still very intensely interested in this, but I do want to address something in chat. Connor, you do know Destiny said he wasn't at full power here. This was when he was trying to be a pundit in shows and playing nice. He's disavowed these convos. I don't know why you would disavow these. What's wrong with this conversation so far? Like maybe it'll get worse, but I think if he just came in here and was like a total fucking dickhead, nobody would give him the time of day. So we'll see if it gets worse and if there's something worth disavowing. So far, I'm very interested.
Working, I kind of had to drop out of school. I was working, and then I got into streaming. And once I started streaming, I had a son basically around the first year I started streaming. As I started to go through life, and I went from kind of being in this like working poor position to making a lot of money, especially through the lens of my child, I saw how different life was when I had more money versus less. And I guess like the differences between what was available to me and then my child as I made more money while I was really wealthy versus not as wealthy, it kind of started to change the way that I guess.
So you got more attuned to the consequences of inequality?
Basically, I would say,
yeah. And by the way, you guys are still pissing me off. Sapien Green says, I think this debate might have been a turning point for Destiny's desire to talk to Republicans, but this is where you guys are pissing me off. You're like, oh, JBP's a fucking idiot. JBP's a fucking idiot. JBP's a fucking idiot. And we're actually starting this conversation. Number one, he has an insightful question about whether or not Stephen took his sense of gaming and applied it to politics, because that would be an interesting insight. Stephen denies it. I deny his denial. And then even right here, Jordan Peterson, he's not even saying anything. He's making like a psychological analysis of his upbringing. We've already learned that like libertarianism does absolutely meet Stephen's, Stephen's kind of temperament, but Jordan Peterson 100% just accurately summarized what changed Stephen's mind in a very succinct way, which was that once you become aware of how inequality affects the working class versus the middle class or the upper class, if you're an asshole, then you'll say, well, get good, loser. Anybody can be rich. If you're a thoughtful person, then you might say, okay, well, not everybody has the talents that I do. Therefore, we should build a system that doesn't leave the working class in total depravity, material depravity. And that was what Stephen did, and Jordan Peterson astutely observed it. So I don't know why you guys are being such dicks.
Okay, and so how did that lead you to develop more sympathy for left-leaning ideas, particularly?
I guess my core beliefs have never really changed, but I think the way that those become applied kind of change.
Yep.
So much the same way that you might think that everybody deserves a shot to go to school and have an education. That might be like a core belief, where as a libertarian or conservative, I might think that as long as a school is available, everybody's got the opportunity to go and study. But maybe now as like a liberal or progressive or whatever you'd call me, I might say, okay, well, we need to make sure that there is enough, maybe like food in the household or some kind of funding program to make sure the kid can actually go to school and study, basically. So like the core drive is the same, but I think the applied principle ends up changing a bit based on what you
right. So is your concern?
True.
essentially something like the observation that if people are bereft enough of substance, let's say, that it's difficult for them to take advantage of equal opportunities, even if they are presented to them, let's say.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And you have some belief, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have some belief that there is room for state intervention at the level of basic provision to make those opportunities more manifest.
Yeah, to varying degrees, yeah.
Okay. So let
And fuck you guys. You're like, this isn't that insightful. We just got, I'm going to get pissed. I am pissed. I got to go full screen. Guys, I get it. You're in my chat. You have a 3,000 IQ. You have an immaculate taste in content. Okay. The average person is a fucking idiot. Okay. We just got done watching the serfs have information be smashed into his fucking forehead repeatedly and it to fucking bounce off of his smooth brain and wash off like water off of a duck's ass. That's most people. So when you say Jordan Peterson observing that gamesmanship could easily apply to politics is not a decent insight, you're kind of a fucking smug asshole. And I'm sure people have accused you of that in the past, or else you wouldn't have said it. Same thing with what's the other insight? That Stephen's applied morality, his principles have stayed relatively similar, but his applied morality is different, and therefore the problems of inequality. Believe it or not, Jordan Peterson actually believes in some level of equality in order to stabilize society. Seeing that is what, or asking, being curious enough to ask about that question is insightful. So the fact that you think everyone is like Stephen or everyone is like you're fucking autistic. Most people are stupid as shit. So get off your fucking high horse, come down to reality, and fucking be normal. Okay? I love you. I love you. More people are like Lance from the Serfs than are like Destiny or even my chat. Before we get back into it, Fashion 40 says base take, Connor, but is life not particular gamesmanship? Yes, but tons of people are bad at gamesmanship, and lots of people don't even analyze the games they are playing.
let's start talking more broadly then on the political side. So how would you characterize the difference, in your opinion, between the left and the conservative political viewpoints?
On a very, very, very broad level, if there's some, I would say if there's some like good world.
Short Stack Goblin asks an important question. Am I trying to replace Dan? No. But I am trying to be good enough friends with Steven that eventually I'm in a room with Dan and we fucking verbally fight.
That we're all aiming for. I think people on the left seem to think that a collection of taxes from a large population that goes into a government that's able to precisely kind of dole out where that tax money goes. You're basically able to take the problems of society. You're able to scrape off, hopefully, not super significant amount of money from people that can afford to give a lot of money. And then through government programs and redistribution, you target those taxes essentially to people that kind of need whatever bare minimum to take advantage of opportunities in society. Yeah.
Okay.
And then on the conservative end, I guess a conservative would generally think that why would the government take my money? I think from a community point of view, through churches, through community action, through families, we can better allocate our own dollars to our own friends and family to help them and give them the things that they need so that they can better participate in and thrive in society, basically.
Okay, so one of the things that I've always found a mystery, I mean, I think there's an equal mystery on the left and on the right in this regard, is that the more conservative types tend to be very skeptical of big government, and the leftist types tend to be more skeptical of big corporations. Right?
Well, hold on.
history on the left and on the right in this regard is that the more conservative types tend to be very skeptical of big government, and the leftist types tend to be more skeptical of big corporations.
Not always. This is an American phenomena. So when you're talking about skeptical of quote unquote big government, the right wing historically, if you look at it as an analysis of institution, the right wing were the apologists of the monarchy and nobility of Europe during the French Revolution. And so the right wing was not always skeptical of government. And then with the left wing, they were kind of skeptical of government, but realistically, they're skeptical of concentrated power no matter where it manifests. And so I feel like this analysis is effectively like an American historical analysis, whereas it's not true throughout all of history.
Right. Well, so following through the logic that you just laid out, you made the suggestion that one of the things that characterizes people on the left is the belief that government can act as an agent of can and should act as an agent of distribution. Okay. A potential problem for that is the gigantism of the government that does that. Now, the conservatives are skeptical of that gigantism. And likewise, the liberals, the progressives in particular, we'll call them progressives, are skeptical of the reach of gigantic corporations. And I've always seen a commonality in those two, in that both of them are skeptical of gigantism. And so one of the things that I'm concerned about, generally speaking, with regard to the potential for the rise of tyranny is the emergence of giants. And one potential problem with the view that the government can and should act.
LB for $2 says, can we have one episode of Star Talk? Yes. As like a separate stream on a weekend, we could do some sci-fi nerd shit. Sure.
Act as an agent of redistribution is that there is an incentive put in place, two kinds of incentives. Number one, a major league incentive towards gigantism and tyranny. And number two, an incentive for psychopaths who use compassion to justify their grip on power, to take money and to claim that they're doing good. And I see that happening everywhere now in the name of, particularly in the name of compassion. And it's one of the things that's made me very skeptical, in particular about the left, and at least about the progressive edge of the left. So I
100% agree with this. But I mean, I'm skeptical of this in all its many manifest forms. And this is one of my biggest criticisms of Hassan Piker and of Vaush, and to a lesser degree, Destiny, is when you see it like, so what's happened? This actually goes back to the woke right. I need to follow up with Andrew Wilson because we were supposed to have a conversation about it. Where's the woke right? Scrolling. Give me a second. Woke right. So what Jordan Peterson is talking about, and he talked about this with James Lindsay, is that there are Machiavellian, meaning that they don't believe what they truly say. They just manipulate people with words to their own ends. They're psychopathic, meaning that they don't have empathy for people besides themselves. They're narcissistic, which means they're self-obsessed. And they're sadistic, meaning that they enjoy the pain of others. I would say that to greater and lesser degrees, the right wing and the alternative media scene is filled with fucking freaks like this. And the truth is that I think that a lot of powerful institutions are filled with people like this because psychopaths tend to step on other people willingly in order to climb the social hierarchy game. And so as a result of that, my only problem with Jordan Peterson saying this is you could say that the left is filled with these people, particularly the authoritarian left is filled with people like this, but so is the right. So are some of your best fucking friends and former colleagues, Jordan. Trump is like this. Candace is like this. Tucker is like this. Whatever that Matt Walsh is like this. They're all fucking Machiavellian, psychopathic, narcissistic, sadistic fucking freaks. So the fact that JBP recognizes this, good. The fact that he doesn't recognize this on his own team, infuriating.
Curious about what you think about those two. First of all, it's a paradox to me that the conservatives and the leftists face off each other with regard to their concern about different forms of gigantism and don't seem to notice that the thing that unites them is some antipathy. This is especially true for the libertarians, some antipathy towards gigantic structures per se. And so then I would say, with regards to your antithesis between liberalism and conservatives, the conservatives are pointing to the fact that there are intermediary forms of distribution that can be utilized to solve the social problems that you're describing that don't bring with them the associated problem of gigantism. And
like what? I would actually be very curious about what those solutions are, because people will often cite like charity as like the vehicle through which we could achieve like redistributive economics that would actually solve all of society's problems. Well, there's plenty of fucking wealth. There's plenty of wealth, correlated and concentrated in the upper echelons of society. So why aren't we seeing attempts by the private market to solve social ills? They clearly, and then also in the 19th century, why didn't they do that? In the early 20th century, why didn't they do that? It's pretty clear that human beings are ultimately selfish creatures. And when they're given incredible amounts of wealth and power, you will be lucky if they break off 10% of it in order to help the rest of society out.
like it's been shocking to me to watch the left, especially in the last 6 years, ally itself, for example, with pharmaceutical companies, which was something I'd never thought I would see in my lifetime. I mean, for decades, the only gigantic corporations the left was more skeptical of than the fossil fuel companies were the pharmaceutical companies. And
oh God! All right, this is where Dad's gonna lose me as well. He's gonna fucking. He's been hanging out with stoner, schizoid, right-wing freaks, and so Dad's gonna lose me. Not my biological dad, my internet dad. I love my biological dad. I love my internet dad, but my internet dad is about to lose me.
that all seemed to vanish overnight around the COVID time. So I know the story. That's a lot of things to throw at you, but it sort of outlines the territory that we could probably investigate productively.
Yeah, so a couple things. I would say that the current political landscape we have, I think, is less. I understand the concept of conservatives supporting corporations and liberals supporting like large government. I think today the divide we're starting to see more and more is more of like a populist, anti-populist rise, or even like an institutional or anti.
True, and I've picked the losing side, institutionalism. What an asshole.
Institutional rise. So, for instance, I think conservatives today in the United States are largely characterized with, I would say, with populism, in that they're supporting like certain figures, namely right now Donald Trump, who they think alone can kind of like lead them.
Sorry, reading this because it's pertinent. Sacred Snow says, you can ask Destiny to expand more upon why he disavows his playing nice with MAGA phase, but from what I understand, yes, they were happy to have him in the space, but he feels he reinforced their audience's opinion of the pundit by not making them look stupid. If you give too much charity to batshit positions, you normalize them. I understand that. That makes sense.
Against the corrupt institutions, be them corporate or government. I feel like most conservatives today are not as trustful of big corporations as they were back in like the Bush era, where we would, conservatives would champion, big corporations.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
That's a strange thing because it makes the modern conservatives a lot more like the 60s leftists.
Potentially, yeah.
I hate the misuse of the term leftist, but let's not get spun up on small details.
I mean, that brings us into the issue, too, of whether the left-right divide is actually a reasonable way of construing the current political landscape at all. And I'm not sure it is, but...
Right.
I think left and right is perfectly viable if people actually understand what the term is. People think that left and right just means Democrat, Republican, and that's how they use it. But left used to mean, because it originates from the French Revolution, was the people who were more people, pro-demos, the Jacobins and the moderate reformers and all that kind of stuff. Those were the lefties, the left side of the parliament. And the right wing were the institutionalists. They were the conservatives and the traditionalists who wanted to preserve monarchy and the power of the church and the power of social institutions and nobility. And so as a result, they created like an absolute shitstorm of a society. So between that, there was Burke, who is the father of conservatism, who saw the chaos of the French Revolution. And he said, what conservatism should do is start from a default to social institutions because they've been formed over centuries and millennia and have within them contained wisdom that has evolved over time. But You should needle and criticize progressive ideas. That way you can eliminate the bad ones and integrate the good ones. That is what the father of conservatism said. And so when I do that, people are like, you're a progressive because you're willing to change things in order to improve society. It's like, fuck you. Sorry for getting spicy, but fuck you. That's what Edmund Burke said, the father of philosophical conservatism. I fucking hate that conservatism in the modern parlance means traditionalism. It makes me want to kill myself with a hammer.
Right now, it kind of is, but only because so many conservatives are following Trump. So like your populist, anti-populist thing kind of maps on kind of cleanly to the left and right. It doesn't work with progressives, though, or the far left, because they're also anti-large everything. So in a surprising way, on very, very far left people, you might find them having a bit more in common.
Hey, Melody, I love you, but you said Connor's an easy guy to impress. Go fuck yourself.
With kind of like a MAGA Trump supporter than like a center left liberal. So for instance, like both of these groups of people on the very far left will be very dovish on foreign policy, probably a little bit more isolationist. They're not a big fan of like a ton of immigration or a ton of trade with other countries. They might think that there's a lot of institutional capture of both government and corporations. So both all of the MAGA supporters and the far, far left might think.
Crawling Chaos says, I dislike Peterson for his role in MAGA taking over. You can disagree all you like, but that fucking happened. No, I agree with you. Why do you think why do you think I went so hard at Adam Friended? Adam Friended, Sitch, and I view as like 90% like politically aligned. They, weirdly enough, Sitch will go on a fucking rant about social institutions, and he will almost be without, I don't even know if he's ever read Burke. He is channeling the spirit of Edmund Burke. Like Sitch could be Edmund Burke reincarnated. And I wish he had his political relevance. But Adam did the fucking sweeper cringe centrist heterodox apologia that allowed people to view Trump as the lesser of two evils. And everybody saw it coming from a mile away. And I am disappointed in Jordan Peterson doing that. But I think what happened was, he came out and he said fairly normie, center-right, lib-con shit. The far left attacked him viciously and painted him as a Nazi. So he started hanging out with conservatives, and then he started just being friendly to all conservative, disruptive ideas. And I also think he got rich, so he became disconnected with the working class and the middle class. So yeah, I view Jordan Peterson as a fallen figure. That doesn't mean that you can't learn from him. And that's why I get frustrated with chat. Vlad Darius Serban, as an example, says, I'm biased. I dislike Peterson. It is not that insightful. Hey, you change from A to B? Yeah, because you prefer A? Yeah, how fucking insightful of him to follow the convo. Vlad, do you have any idea how much content we consume where one of the major problems in the conversation is people being unable to follow or conceptualize the words being said? That's like 80% of internet content. 80% of internet content is actually people disagreeing on what words meaning, and some people being so fucking stupid that they can't even define the words that they're using. That's 80% of Twitch and YouTube political content. Anyways, you hurt my feelings.
That corporations don't have our best interest at heart, and the government is corrupt and captured by lobbyists. You'll see a lot of overlap there.
Right.
I think that sometimes there's a couple things. One is just something I feel like I've discovered. People have no principles. I think that people are largely guided by whatever is kind of satisfying them or making them feel good at the time. I think that's a real.
Let me go ahead and I'm going to extrapolate this out. Sorry. My chat, if you don't like me talking for prolonged periods, you can fuck off. Grassroots says, a lot of people think they are pro gamers, but are actually chewing on the controller. This is true in games and life. Lol. Yes. And what I would say is, I'm an above average FPS player. All right. First person shooter player. But all I do is sight picture and sight alignment in a quick way. So I walk into a room, I line up the gun as quickly as possible, and I kill the target. I also know how to play corners really well, where I can maximize cover and minimize exposure. And I'm also a really good camper. Like, I know you're not supposed to camp because it's cheating, but if there's a way to camp on the map and get a bunch of kills, I can typically identify the place that is going to have the most amount of foot traffic, and then I can get into a position that not a lot of people can see, and then I can just start annihilating people until they destroy my campsite. So I think that I'm an above average FPS player. However, there are FPS players who blow me away, because not only do they play the odds while moving through the map, they also optimize weapons, and they optimize movement, and they optimize maps, and they optimize power-ups, and they optimize this, and they optimize that. And in my opinion, they optimize to the point that the game is no longer fun. You know what I'm saying? I liked running around in Call of Duty and playing with an explosive crossbow and a ballistic knife, and I liked having a 0.8 KD ratio on the map, because they were killing me with sniper rifles and machine guns, and I was killing them with cross-map explosive crossbow shots and 20-yard ballistic knife shots. You know what I'm saying? They might be beating me in the game, but I am shaming them with the stupid fucking weapons I am using to kill them. And so, like, optimization is beautiful. I love people who have optimized their lives and optimized their games, and I applaud them. You should not optimize your life to the point that it's no longer fun. Sharing a pearl of gamer wisdom with you, bros. Oh, fudge nuggets.
Really important thing to understand, because people's beliefs will seem to change at random. If you're trying to imagine that a belief is coming from some underlying principle or is governed by some internal, like moral or reasonable code or whatever, I think generally there are large social groups and people kind of follow them along from thing to thing, which is why you end up in strange worlds sometimes where like the position on vaccines and being an anti-vaxxer might have been seen as something, 10 years ago as kind of like a hippie
I already know where this conversation is going, and I guarantee you the next 30 minutes are going to piss me the fuck off.
leftist, and now
Probably from Jordan, by the way.
maybe it's more like a conservative, or it's associated more with like MAGA Trump supporters or whatever. I think as a result of how the social
Michael M., I parasocially love you.
groups move around. When it comes to you mentioned this like gigantism thing. That's another thing where I'm not sure if people actually care about gigantism or if they're using it as a proxy for other things that they don't like. Like,
true.
I could totally imagine.
Well, I care about it.
Sure. Yeah, you might. Yeah, sorry. It just
That's
in
okay.
general.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Because like I could imagine somebody saying that like they don't trust like a large government, they think there's too much, prone to tyranny or something like that, but also be supportive of an institution like the Catholic Church, which is literally, one guy who is a direct line to
But they
God.
can't tax,
Well, I mean,
and they don't have a military.
that
And they
is
can't conscript.
All right, this sounds like it's actually going to be like a larger contention. So let me go ahead and play this.
somebody saying that like they don't trust like a large government, they think there's too much, prone to tyranny or something like that, but also be supportive of an institution like the Catholic Church, which is literally, one guy who is a direct line to
But they
God.
can't tax.
I'm going to agree with Jordan here. However, I know Steven's counter argument, and I think it's going to be valid. So let's just listen for a moment.
Well, I mean,
And they don't have a military.
They got the Swiss Guard, lol.
And they
is
can't conscript you.
true.
Right?
Yeah,
And they can't
But they do have the power of heaven and hell.
throw you in jail.
that is true. Yeah, I mean, I
Right?
would,
Well, those are major and significant. I mean, I get the overlap. Don't get me wrong.
sure, but I'm
But-
saying like, even if you had a local government, like if you had a state government or a tribe, usually they've got some form of enacting punishment. It'll be sometimes more brutal, but they can throw you in jail. Conscription hasn't existed in the U.S. since the Vietnam War.
Yet.
I mean, yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Why is Dad getting so fucking pissed off? Is it because so I'm gonna make an observation real quick. It sounds like Jordan, I'm gonna be critical here. Sorry, internet dad. It seems like he's so used to people being in awe of his insight, and he started the conversation with a certain level of charity and like inquisitive nature to Stephen. And now that Stephen is not being charitable back and is not being inquisitive back, he's talking to Jordan as if Jordan is a child, who doesn't understand complex topics. I can look at the sneer I could be reading too much into it, but look at this.
Right.
Look at it.
I think that sometimes there's a couple things. One is just something I feel like I've discovered. People have no principles. Good at random. If you're trying to search social groups and people kind of follow them along from thing to thing.
Sorry, did I fast forward instead of rewind? What did I do?
Good at the time. I think it's a really important thing to understand because people's beliefs will seem to change at random. If you're trying to,
Did I rewind?
It might have been seen as something, 10 years ago as kind of like a hippie leftist. And now I think as a result of how the social groups move around.
Anyways, I'm just going to summarize it because I think I misclicked and I think I might have fast forwarded a couple of minutes and I don't necessarily want to be clicking around for it. I want to get through the content. Effectively, I feel like if you rewind even 30 seconds, 2 minutes in the VOD, you will actually see Stephen kind of being dismissive and not acknowledging what Jordan said, where there obviously the Catholic Church has a lot of power, a lot of influence, et cetera, but there are very clear privileges of being a government that are more threatening to human liberty than the Catholic Church is capable of. And so Stephen kind of like, he acknowledges it, but then he just moves it off briefly without changing any of his thought pattern or criticism. And I think Jordan Peterson is borderline offended that he didn't take more time to consider what was being said. So if we bump into it again, I'll point out the exact grimace that Jordan Peterson makes.
When it comes to you mentioned this like gigantism thing.
Oh, shit.
That's another thing where I'm not
here.
sure if people actually care about gigantism or if they're using it as a proxy for other things that they don't like. Like I could totally imagine.
Well, I care about it.
Sure. Yeah, you might. Yeah, sorry. It just
That's
meant
okay.
in general.
That's
yeah.
okay.
Because like I could imagine somebody saying that like they don't trust like a large government, they think there's too much prone to tyranny or something like that, but also be supportive of an institution like the Catholic Church, which is literally one guy who is a direct line to
But they
God.
can't tax.
Well, I mean,
And they don't have a military.
Watch this. Watch for the sneer.
That
and
is
they can't conscript you.
true.
Right?
Yeah,
And they can't throw you in jail.
that is true. Yeah, I mean,
Right. Well, those are major and significant. I mean, I get the overlap. Don't get me wrong.
So Jordan's being conciliatory here, where he's saying like, okay, I understand that there's an overlap for gigantism. However, these are the privileges where people are specifically caring about the government. Now watch this.
Sure. But I'm saying like even if you had a local government, like if you had a state government or a tribe, usually they've got some form of enacting punishment. It'll be sometimes more brutal, but they can throw you in jail. Conscription hasn't existed in the US since the Vietnam War. I mean,
And
yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
so look at this like look down thing. So it seems like Jordan is actually concerned about something. And he's offended by the flippant nature with which Stephen dismisses it.
So yeah, I think that I guess when I look at
let's go back. Let's go back to the redistribution issue. I mean,
real quick. True Zealous says, Connor, off topic, but if a creator boxing event reached out to you to participate, do you and you get to choose your opponent, would you do it and who would you pick? So number one, the answer is yes. I do have neck issues, so I would need to get like a clean bill of health from the doctor, and I would also just have to accept the fact that a weird punch could leave me paralyzed and or dead. But it could be really fun. I think that I should do steroids and fight Sam Hyde. I don't think I have the balls to do that. I would fight Hassan Piker, and considering I hate him, I think that would have to be my choice. I would love to fight Mike from PA or Adam Friended or Admiral Gibbs or who's another person that annoys me? Aircraft Sparky or Pisco, and I love Pisco, but I'm just saying I would fight him, or anybody who annoys me. I would fight them. I would fight all of them, especially if they're shorter than me. I really wouldn't give a shit. Like, yeah, I really wouldn't care because I can do cardio. I can get my cardio back up. I can get my weightlifting back up. I can get my, martial arts back up. So if I had a boxing trainer in 6 months, I would fight almost everybody. I would expect to lose to Andrew Tate and Sam Hyde. I think I could beat most other people. So, or I could get my ass kicked in a really entertaining way. Oh, I would 100% fight Queeman as well. But he's short, so it feels unfair. I would train Steven to fight Queeman.
We pay 65% of our income at, say, upper middle class to upper middle class level in.
Oh, this is going to piss me off. Oh, Canada. Okay.
At, say, upper middle class to upper middle class level in Canada. It isn't obvious to me at all that that money is well used. In fact, quite the contrary. In my country now, our citizens make 60% of, they produce 60% of what you produce in the US. That's plummeted over the last 20 years as state intervention has increased. I'm not convinced that the claim that the interests of people.
I think Canada is further socialized. I don't think Canada is a socialist country, but it is further socialized than the United States is, and therefore they have an inverse problem from the United States. The United States probably needs not a little bit more social spending. It needs to deploy the taxation that it currently has in better ways, whereas I think that Canada could probably cut back a little bit and deploy the cash better.
Who lack opportunity are best served by state intervention. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, first of all, I'm aware of the relationship between inequality and social problem. There's a very well-developed literature on that, and it essentially shows that the more arbitrary, the broader the reach of inequality in a political institution of any given size, the more social unrest. So where all people are poor, there isn't much social unrest, and where all people are rich, there isn't much social unrest. But when there's a big gap between the two, there's plenty, and that's mostly driven by disaffected young men.
I'm going to stare into the camera. So the right-wing prescriptions from MAGA are going to help with that, or are they going to make it even fucking worse? My argument is that MAGA policy is going to make these problems of young men being disaffected with society and jealous / don't feel like they have opportunity is going to get much worse in the next 5 to 10 years.
Who aren't very happy that they can't climb. There are barriers in their way. And so there is reason to ameliorate relative poverty. The problem with that, to some degree, is that most attempts to ameliorate relative poverty tend to increase absolute poverty, and they do it dramatically. And the only solution that we've ever been able to develop to that is something approximating a free market system. I wouldn't call it a capitalist system because I think that's capture of the terminology by the radical leftists. It's a free exchange system, and the price you pay for a free exchange system is you still have inequality, but the advantage you gain is that the absolute levels of privation plummet. And I think the data on that I think they're absolutely conclusive, especially, and that's been especially demonstrated in the radical decrease in rates of poverty since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989, because we've lifted more people out of poverty in the last 4 decades than we had in the entire course of human history up to that date. And that's,
as a neoliberal, I don't think that Stephen is going to object to any of this.
Not least because the statist interventionist types who argued for a radical state-sponsored redistribution lost the Cold War, right? And that freed up Africa to some degree, and certainly the Southeast Asian countries, to pursue something like a free trade economy. And that instantly made them rich, even China. So that's an argument, let's say, on the side of free exchange, but it's also an argument, a twofold argument, pointing out how we ameliorate absolute poverty, which should be a concern for leftists, but doesn't seem to be anymore, by the way, and also an argument for the maintenance of a necessary inequality. Like, I'm not sure that inequality can be decreased beyond a certain degree without that decrease causing other serious problems.
I agree with everything that Jordan has just said. LB says, who on the left is like Tucker or Candace? I'm curious what conservatives think is an equivalent. Yes, True Zealot, Vosh, Hassan. Yup. Now, I think Vosh probably believes his own bullshit, but is too lazy to execute. And I think Hassan probably 70-80% believes his own bullshit, but I think they're delusional enough in order to believe that they're like their weaponized empathy and compassion is actually just empathy and compassion. So yeah, Bosch and Hassan 100% all day. If they were actually interested in instituting a decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production, they actually have sufficient wealth that they could create a cooperative economic venture that like instantiates, you know, socialism as a communal model. But then they always defer to the state, defer to the state, defer to the state. We need the government to do this. We need the government to do this. We need the government to do this. And Bosch does that as a like anarcho-communist / libertarian socialist. Yeah.
We can talk about that, but it's a complicated problem.
Yeah, for one point of clarification, when you say leftist, what do you mean by that?
This is happening, says the left allied itself with Big Pharma. Ha 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 ha. He's talking about like COVID vaccines. So I get it. You can laugh, but that's what he's talking about. Tigeroon for $5. Thank you, King. Says, great point. JP talks about the toxic feminine empathy of the left, but rarely, if ever, calls out the performative, counterproductive cruelty of MAGA. Yup.
Well, I was going with your definition, like essentially the core idea being something like the central problem being one of relative inequality in distribution of resources, and the central solution to that being something like state-sponsored economic intervention. I mean, there's other ways we could define left and right, and we can do that, but, I'll stick with the one that you brought forward to begin with.
Gotcha. Okay. I only want to be clear on that because people get mad if I call myself a leftist. Oftentimes online or especially in Europe or worldwide, leftists will refer exclusively to like socialists or communists, and anybody to the right of that would be considered like a liberal. If you
no, usually a fascist.
Well, depending on
very rapid.
This is going to be important, so I need to pay attention.
Sometimes online or especially in Europe or worldwide, leftists will refer exclusively to like socialists or communists, and anybody to the right of that would be considered like a liberal. If you
no, usually a fascist.
Well,
that's funny.
Depending on
very rapidly.
Yeah. I just wanted to be clear on that. So I'm absolutely a pro-capitalist, pro-free market guy. I'm never gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. It's good to get that clear. Why?
Yeah.
Good.
Because I would argue that when you look at like the fall of the Soviet Union, or you look at the failure of like socialist or communist regimes, I don't know if the issue there was so much redistribution. I think the problem
that was one of many issues.
I don't think it was an issue at all. Actually, I would say I think the issue was.
Come on.
I would argue that when you look at like the fall of the Soviet Union, or you look at the failure of like socialist or communist regimes, I don't know if the issue there was so much redistribution. I think the problem.
Yeah, we're going to need to dig into that.
That was one of many issues.
I don't think it was an issue at all, actually, I would say. I think the issue was command economies.
Wait
go ahead.
Wait a minute. What do you mean redistribution wasn't an issue? What the hell do you think they did to the kulaks? That was forced redistribution. It resulted in the
or the Great Leap Forward, or the subsequent starvation, or the centrally planned economies, or their military-industrial complex, or the lack of private industry leading to stagnation within the private economy, or the fact that when they weren't stagnating, they were actually privatizing large portions of the economy. Yeah, Stephen lost me as well.
Death of 6 million people. So maybe I'm not understanding what you mean, but that was redistribution at its like pinnacle.
Sure.
And forced redistribution. And it was brutal.
When I think of the strengths of capitalism, the ability for markets to dynamically respond to shifting consumer demand is like the reason why capitalism and free market economies dominate the world. When you've got socialist or communist systems, command economies, where a government is trying to say, this is how much this is going to cost, this is how much you're going to produce and make. This is a failed way of managing a state economy. Even in places where they still do it, there are always shadow economies and stuff. There were in the Soviet Union that prop up where people try to basically ameliorate the conditions that are resulting from said horrible command economy practices. So I guess in a way you could argue a command economy is kind of like redistribution. It's a form of it, but
I mean, that's definitionally kind of what we're talking about.
It's a worse problem. If you're pointing to the fact that that's a worse problem, I'm
I would say that's definitely the reason.
That's very conciliatory.
Why these places failed, because they just weren't able to respond to changing conditions.
Okay, so what's the difference between
Going online without ExpressVPN is like leaving your kids with the nearest stranger.
Okay, so what's the difference between a state that attempts to redistribute to foster equality of opportunity and a command economy? Is it a difference of degree? Like, are you looking at models, let's say, like the Scandinavian countries? Or I wouldn't use Canada, by the way, because Canada is now, what would you call, predicted by economic analysis analysts to have the worst performing economy for the next 4 decades of all the developed world. So maybe we'll just leave the example of Canada off the table.
Sure.
That's funny. So let me show you. He's asking, what should a redistributive government do? So I think that there's a psychological concept called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think that people typically get up and work every single day because they need to fulfill their physiological needs. They need food, they need water, and they need shelter. And that's one of the prime motivators for why they get up every day. So I think these things should be, how do I say this? Easy to access by being socially and economically productive for 40 hours per week. People should be able to access water almost no matter what. They should be able to access nutritious drinks very cheaply. They should be able to access nutritious food very cheaply. They should be able to access decent housing very cheaply. And so it's the government's role, in my opinion, not to provide these services and guarantee these services, because I think this is the reason why most people wake up and move in the morning. However, I do think it's the state's job to make such an abundant economy through subsidization and incentive structures that food, water, and shelter is easy to obtain as long as you're economically and socially productive for 40 hours a week. Then when it comes to security, I think that this is the primary role of the state that almost everybody agrees to, is providing the physical security for its citizens. When it comes to social and ego, these things are infinitely more difficult to control. And so I think that effectively it's the state's job to provide early childhood education and public education until citizens are adults, to guarantee that they will be, or as close to guarantee as possible, that there will be socially well adapted human beings who make up its citizens and constituency. Okay. So I view education as necessary to do this. But as soon as you have physical security, everybody can meet their physiological needs with a reasonable amount of effort. You have physical security as close to guaranteed as possible. You have a social system that enables citizens to become well-adapted social and economic beings who are capable of pursuing self-actualization. That's the role of the state. It's to enable, not to control. End of Connor's political theory.
Scandinavian countries are often the polities that are pointed to by, I would say, by people who, at least in part, are putting forward a view of redistribution for purposes of equality of opportunity like you are. But they're a strange analogy because they're very small countries. And up till now, they were very ethnically homogenous. Exactly. And that makes.
Well, Azrai says, Valor, how does a Burkean conservative actually get rid of institutions they view as no longer needed? They become vestigial, like the monarchy. We obviously eliminated the monarchy in the United States through force of arms, but they're effectively vestigial in Europe. They're so desiccated and small that nobody even gives a shit about them anymore. Drakara, except for ceremonies. Drakara says, Connor, gonna pick up my first combat patrol. I'm stuck between Dark Angels and Death Guard. This is strictly for aesthetics. I know little of gameplay, but want to set up myself for future success. I do not have advice. Follow the rule of cool. Whatever you think is coolest, that is what you should get. Although, if you get Chaos, you're giving Imperial players like more bad guys to shoot at, and that is a desperate problem within the hobby, is everybody collects Imperial, so it's Imperial versus Imperial battles all the time, whereas realistically, we need more people to play enemy factions.
A big difference when you're trying to flatten out the redistribution. Plus, they're also incredibly wealthy, which makes, redistribution, let's say, a lot easier. So So why doesn't a government that's bent on redistribution fall prey to the pitfalls of command economy and forced redistribution, for that matter? How do you protect against that?
I think what you have to do is very, very, very difficult. Is people get very ideologically captured by both ends, and they feel very, I guess, like committed, or they feel very allegiant to pushing certain forms of economic organization. And I think sometimes it blinds them to some of the benefits of what exists when you incorporate kind of multiple models, or I mean, you'd call them mixed economies, which is really what every capitalist economy today is. It's some form of free market capitalism combined with some form of like government intervention to control for negative externalities. These are the ways that all economies, even in Scandinavia and the world, work. And I think that recognizing the benefits of both systems are the best way to make things work. Yeah.
Fair enough. And the Scandinavian countries seem to have done a pretty good job of that. But like I said, they have a simpler problem to solve, let's say, than the Americans have. Negative externalities. That's an interesting rabbit hole to wander down. The problem I have with negative externalities, you made a case already that, and again, correct me if I've got this wrong, but I think that I understood what you said. A free market, free exchange economy is a gigantic distributed computational device.
Basically, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Which, funnily enough, one of the big problems for command economies is called the computation problem, because no central body can actually compute, the ins and outs of.
Right, exactly. Right, that's a fatal problem, right? Because it doesn't have the computational power. It certainly doesn't have the speed of data recognition. It doesn't have the on-the-ground agents if all of the perception and decision-making is centralized, right? It's way too low resolution. It's going to crash. Okay, so, and I think that that's comprehensible technically as well as ideologically.
Based.
All right, so, but having said that, with regards to externalities, all the externalities.
Uh-oh, you might lose me.
That a market economy can't compute are so complex that they can't.
LB says, okay, not the lolly porn guy, but I think Hassan is more right than wrong. LB, that sentence alone makes me want to smash my skull in with a hammer. That is a crazy sentence to type in my chat.
Be determined centrally by the same argument. And
there are ways to account for them, though.
Really?
That work with.
Tell me.
Yeah.
How. So I can't see that, because I can't see how that they can be accounted for without the same computational problem immediately arising.
Yeah, and I understand that. And I think that's a problem sometimes of people very far on the left when they want to deal with certain problems. I think that they want to bring like heavy-handed, like things like price controls in to say, well, we need less of this, so let's just make this cost this particular thing, which ironically enough introduces a whole other set of externalities that will happen when you get a lot of friction between where your price floor or ceiling is set compared to what a market was set at. But ideally, if you're a reasonable person and you view economies as mixed economies, what you try to do is you try to take these externalities, meaning things that aren't accounted for with your primary system. So in a capitalist system, an externality might be something that causes a negative effect, but it doesn't cost you any money. Pollution would be a good example of that. And rather than saying like, well, no company can pollute this much, or, if you're a company, you have to use these things because the other things are making too much pollution, all you do is you say, okay, well, if we've determined that, say, carbon is bad for the atmosphere, well, we're just going to attach a little price to that. Okay, government is going to say that, yeah, if you pollute this much, here's the price. And then if you want to pay for it, you can. But that type of intervention in the economy basically allows the free market to hopefully do its job, because the government has tacked on a little bit of a price something that tries to account for the cost of that externality. Yeah.
Great. That's a great example. We can go right down that rabbit hole. Carbon. Okay. So first of all, one of the things I've seen, you tell me what you think about this, something that I've seen that actually shocks me, that I was interested in watching over the last 5 or 6 years. I wondered what would happen when the left, the progressives, ran into a conundrum. And the conundrum is quite straightforward. If you pursue carbon pricing and you make energy more expensive, then you hurt the poor. And I don't think you just hurt them. In fact, I know you just don't hurt them. I heard a man 2 days ago who's fed 350 million people in the course of his life, heading the UN's largest relief agency, make the claim quite straightforwardly that misappropriation on the part of interventionist governments increased the rate of absolute privation dramatically in the world over the last 4 or 5 years. And that has happened not least because of carbon pricing, not just carbon pricing, but
this is going to drive me fucking crazy. Where somebody tag Gen X, see if she's in here.
Insistence that carbon per se is an externality that we should control. Now, Germany's paid a radical price for that, for example. So their power is now about 5 times as expensive as it could be. And they
Okay. I mean, we agree with nuclear for subsidization. We agree with quick turn natural gas as a way to utilize carbon emissions to a minimum. Now what?
pollute more per unit of power than they did 10 years ago before they introduced these policies that were hypothetically there to account for externality. And the externality was carbon dioxide. I don't think that's a computable externality. And I don't think there's any evidence whatsoever that it's actually an externality that we should be warping the economic system to ameliorate if
He's getting annoyed because Destiny's taking notes and he keeps looking down. As a sorry, look at this. All right, I might be reading into this. I might be tired, so I'm projecting this shit in. But dude, look at Jordan Peterson's eyeballs, man. He's looking at Destiny and then he's looking at him writing, and his face keeps getting like more animated and more disgusted as he looks at Destiny's face and looks at Destiny's writing and looks at Destiny's face and looks at him writing. Watch this, watch this. It's quite funny.
power than they did 10 years ago before they introduced these policies that were hypothetically there to account for externality. And the externality was carbon dioxide. I don't think that's a computable externality. And I don't think there's any evidence whatsoever that it's actually an externality that we should be warping the economic system to ameliorate if the cost of that, and it will be an increase in absolute privation among the world's poor. So, and here's
Okay. So hold on real quick. So Gen X, hi Gen X. Let me scroll up and see how far behind I am. Okay, so Cameron Mosley says lol Sitch's law. Okay, I forget what Sitch's law is. Somebody needs to remind me. So Cameron Mosley, please remind me. Is it every time you talk about politics, somebody will eventually bring up that they hate fucking Adam Friended? Is that Sitch's law? So Gen X says, lol, well, if carbon dioxide is an externality we should ignore, weird, it's the only thing both sides agree on, at least somewhat. So Gen X, I kind of want to ask you, I'm gonna pull this up. So for carbon capture, how much does carbon capture cost per ton? And it's $15 to $120. So let's go for $120 per CO2 captured. Okay. And so how much does a gallon of gas emit of CO2? Is 8.9 kilograms. Wait, a burning 1 gallon of gas, approximately 8.89 kilograms or 20 pounds of carbon dioxide. Wait, that doesn't sound right. 19.6 pounds? Okay. I mean, I guess it says that's correct. So anyways, so let's just say it's 20 pounds. That sounds high to me, but that's okay. A gallon of gas does equal 20 pounds of CO2. Okay. All right, cool. So 20 pounds of CO2. And then how much does a pound go into a ton? Pound into ton is 0.005 US tons. Okay. So how are we going to do this? It costs $120 in order to capture a ton. I'm trying to do the math on this. Oh, okay. So we could do that. We could do this. So basically, because we're doing 20 pounds. So 20 pounds is 0.0005 multiplied by 20 is 0.01. Okay. Does that make sense? Did I do that right? 0.0005 times 20. Guys, you're going to have to deal with the math because trust me, the math is actually going somewhere. So 20 pounds is 0.01 of a ton. Okay. So if it costs $120 to capture a ton of CO2, then it's $1.20, I guess, to capture a metric ton of CO2. Why can't we just add that to gas? Why can't we just add that to gas? Because right now we're paying $2 or $3 per gallon, right? So it would be like a 25% tax, but gasoline is an incredible resource. Like being able to drive 300 miles on a tank of gas is amazing. So why can't we charge an extra dollar per gallon in order to subsidize CO2 capture? Gen X, please answer that question for me. Wow Man says Sitch's law equals math calculations on stream will always derail any and all stream content. Oh, go fuck yourself. It didn't take me that long.